Okay, excuse me. In honor of our Mercury retrograde dance that we're now underway with, I'm going to spin some astrological stuff out there for you, just kind of like sit back and allow this to settle in because it's, as I every week, actually, as I in every moment look at any particular astrological chart, a lot of things show up as being relevant to what is available to transpire. And I'm going to give you a taste of that today. This is a chart for Monday at 8 o'clock in the morning here on the West Coast. Now, there's a lot of ways to look at this chart. I'm going to look at it, so you can kind of have a feeling for the multiple factors that go into each week's astrological dance considerations. As the day begins, we're just using 8 o'clock in the morning as the beginning of the day. And I look at this as, first house is self. When we have Sagittarius, so there's a self kind of energy that is, it wants to see the bigger picture. That is essential Sagittarius. Now, opposite from self is other. And if I were to consider the other as, the general public, which is a whole bunch of others, the flavor of others that is in play as each day of this week begins, because Sagittarius is on the horizon of each day so far that we begin. The other is Gemini. There's a level of curiosity that wants to, be tickled, as it were. But let's consider what's the flavor of Gemini. We go, the flavor of Gemini is ruled by Mercury, right? Okay, so we go over and say, what kind of communications might be being tickled? Well, first off, we see that Mercury is in Sagittarius. It's in a sign of its detriment. It means it's kind of like its dignity is a little bit challenged by that. It's also retrograde, which is okay. So maybe the process of what it is that we are curious about isn't quite as clear as we had hoped that it would be. But, it's still Gemini. It's just the fact that there are going to be hoops and hurdles you're going to have to get over in order to, as a collective, the group of other, in order to, come up with a consensus. So the idea of a consensus forming easily, you can kind of see there's going to be a wee bit of a challenge there, maybe even a substantial bit of a challenge. And, just for a little extra flavor here, self, Sagittarius house, ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter's over here in that 7th house, also retrograde. So that largesse of awareness that we might be generally inclined to lean toward and wonder what else is there is not necessarily going to be just clearly handed to you on a silver platter saying, this is what we would like you to think about. These are the opportunities that are available to you. No, it's retrograde. It's going back over territory that it's gone over before, and therefore that Gemini mercurial, you can kind of see there are energies afoot here that are saying, oh, you want to go in that direction? Well, I'm going to provide you with a challenge. Actually, I'm going to provide you with several challenges. And so And that's just kick off Monday, kick off a day, December 2nd. Well, I'm going to put this chart in motion for you so you can kind of see that this is the days and times as the things. But as this is moving, you can kind of see it's flipping ahead. Lickety split. Oh, it's all of a sudden it's 9 o'clock. And you can kind of see that as you go through the day, the group energy changes, as does the self energy. We've now shifted into a energy where Cancer is the group energy. And this is, by, 9:30, 10 in the morning, whatever. And this is the same East Coast, West Coast, or wherever you are in the world. This is the general melee of how the planets are going to be talking to us. And the energy of the group, which has changed to Cancer now that we've got to about 10 or so in the morning, is ruled by the moon. That's right, you guessed it. Well, the moon is up here. It's in Sagittarius still. We just had a new moon over the weekend. Actually, today, Saturday, when I'm doing this, is when the new moon transpires, a little bit later in the day. But you can kind of see that the moon in Sagittarius is in this 11th house. So there's a potential energy of groups that is being tickled by that lunar quality. How can we tune in effectively or emotionally, sensitively with one another in this dance of experience of what it is that our group energy as humans together are curious about. And you might also notice that another planet, Mars, is over here in this 7th house. Mars is energy. There's an energy quotient that as we get into this, 9 to 11 time period in the morning or somewhere in that zone, we're going to feel a little bit energized here. There's a kind of an uptick in the possibilities. Plus, we want to feel it. The moon wants to feel this. How is our togetherness being inspired by the larger Sagittarian perspective? But only so much, because remember, Jupiter, the ruler of Sagittarius, is still retrograde. So it's kind of like, maybe 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. Yeah, these are the options that are available to us to consider. And as we, flip the chart back into motion here, as we go through the day, oh, look, all of a sudden we have Leo is flavoring us as a human element here in play for us as the day gets a little bit later in the day. We're here at almost noon, and as such, Leo is ruled by the sun. We may want to feel more important than we actually are, but the sun's in Sagittarius as well. And so up here in the 10th house, actually almost on the midheaven of this chart, that solar desire to actually be in a position of authority, be doing something meaningful in our life. This is kind of energy about a Sagittarian thing. What more is there? But remember, Jupiter is still retrograde, so we still have that, call it a mild anchor. So saying, yeah, you can go hunt for more stuff and be energized by that experience, but, not so fast. So, the day catches and we go faster, and then all of a sudden, oh, look, now we're in Virgo rising. We want to get our thoughts all really put together in an effective enough way that the meaningful dance that we're going to do is going to take us somewhere that we're going to be able to utilize in a practical fashion. Truly Virgo. Also ruled by, that Mercury retrograde, which just went across the ascendant, the midheaven there in the chart, and is heading toward the sun. They're heading toward each other. This is part of the dance of this week. Into the 9th house, the energy. I want to, there are big picture elements that have come into play here in this early part of the afternoon here on Monday. And so I'm going to you can kind of see the energy in play just as we're going through this one day here. Uh, I'm going to shift this chart back around and take you on another spinning journey. Back to our 8 o'clock in the morning. Now, an extra little twist in this thing. Okay, we say, okay, here we are. We're beginning the week. It's 8 o'clock in the morning. We've already got a flavor for how we're thinking. We say, okay, the second house from the group, the populace, this house here is the house of our resources, our movable resources in our life, our money and stuff. And so the second house of this early morning is ruled by the moon. The moon is over here in the first house, in Sagittarius, getting close to being able to shift into Capricorn, still in Sagittarius. So, our understanding of our resource base is that we want to feel, really get into that sensation quality of, how tuned in am I to the money that is in my bank account, the resources that I have? How tuned in am I to, what it is that I own and stuff? And if you really think about this kind of energy at play right now, we've just finished up Thanksgiving. Hopefully everybody had a great one. But the Christmas season is just kind of like, coming in leaps and bounds with the music and all the Black Friday, Black Monday, cyber sale things that are things. You can kind of feel that lunar push there, which may not necessarily be in control. Try saying, how can I best utilize my resources in order to make sure that what it is that I am doing is going to be something that is, worthwhile to everybody involved. And we look at, since the seventh house is the populace, everybody, the fifth house of the populace, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is the 11th house over here, that's our children. What kind of energy do we have toward our children? Well, let's see. Mars rules Scorpio. This is a Scorpio house. We're happy to have our kids in, what we have to look at the Mars. Mars is over here in Leo, in the second house. Do we see our kids as a resource? It's a possibility. This is just the energy, to start out our Monday on this week coming up. We want to know, how are we getting along with one another? It's our Sagittarius over here in this first house, which is the opposite, seventh house of the group. And since it's Sagittarius, the experience of hanging with others takes on some of that energy of, how willing am I to, spin the tail? I'm not using T-A-I-L, T-A-L-E, of where it is that we are going. That's the key, that's in play right now. And we want to see, what about our career? Well, career is over here in this house for the populace. Career, the meaningful, the organization, the diplomatic, the rulership kind of things. This is the 10th house. It's Aries, ruled by Mars. There's our Mars up there in that second house of thing. Do you sense the possibility that what it is that is economically relevant could be maybe at the root of what it is that the organizational governmental control side of life has as its modus operandi? Yeah, lots of factors here, and this is just one day. And so each week I come down and I sit and I go, well, what are the planets going to do this week that's interesting? And as I'm, getting here. Yes, we're just about to make it into December tomorrow. By kind of look at, what's coming down the pike in 2025. A lot of things. I'm trying to keep things, however, within the weekly format so that I don't get you too blown out on the factors. And besides, I think week of energies to consider is enough to allow us to do what we need to do in an effective enough way without getting too carried away with concerns about stuff that's coming down the pike way down the road in front of us. So this week, what kind of dynamic things? We can see that this week, Venus is going to catch up with Pluto here as it shifts into Aquarius. Mercury is going to go retrograde. It's going to catch up with the Sun, so we'll have a Casimi day. And the Casimi day is the 5th, which I don't have that calendar up yet. But we're Monday, so 3 more days. Thursday-ish, we're going to have that Mercury. And, generally Mercury Casimi the Sun is one of those days where our thoughts are being given permission to, think whatever you want. The King Sun has basically given us this capacity to be able to speak our mind, so to speak. That's the kind of energy that, is going to come on Wednesday. Let's see when Venus is going to catch up with Pluto on, looks like Saturday, Thursday, Saturday, Friday, Saturday, somewhere in there. We'll move the chart just to make sure that we can actually see when those days are transpiring. Another aspect that is forming is this longer range Saturn square to Jupiter. And that's a pretty potent signature. I'm only going to mention it lightly here this week because it doesn't actually form until later on. Exactly. But, they're coming together because you can kind of see Saturn is going direct, Jupiter's going retrograde. They're heading toward each other's degrees. They're only, like 4 degrees apart. Tuesday comes along. Oh, look at that. Also, Mercury forming an opposition to Jupiter. And we discussed that a little bit right there at the beginning of our Monday as a factor that these two, retrograde and Mercury, being the planet that, it's not only retrograde. Let's take a look here. It's for the new moon that we have on Saturday, on that very same day, the moon goes out of bounds. We'll be out of bounds until the 4th, tomorrow, according to this chart, which I'm looking at Tuesday, which would be Wednesday. So the moon is traveling out of bounds right now. So those factors that we talked about were during that mid-morning time frame when Cancer was coming over the horizon and our moon was out of bounds. It's kind of like predictability, not high on the list of something that you can count on. So I'm going to be bouncing all over the place because, and this is the kind of stuff that I consider every week as I look at the chart and I say, oh, well, what kind of interplay do we have going on between our planetary neighbors that are, possibly giving us, some mind tickles as to what it is that we ourselves might best and most beneficially tune into. Okay, here it is, Wednesday. We have this exact opposition now between these two retrograde planets, rulers of in each other's signs. They're in detriment, so there's, the strong signature, if you will, of that energy saying, I'd like to... Sometimes I have to shut off the muses that are playing around in my head. They wanted me to sing some song here. Swing on a star, carry a moonbeam, just as I. No, no, no. The retrograde thing is saying, this is something that is not necessarily going to move as smooth as I may have hoped that it would. Our moon on this day, let's see, do a quick check, still out of bounds in the morning on Wednesday, is going to on this day swing right through Venus and Pluto in its journey into Aquarius. So feel the energy of Venus. And Venus, by the way, just went back into bounds, where it's been out of bounds all of November, and I think it went back into bounds on the 3rd. On the 3rd of December. So Venus, how is it that I, engage with what it is that I understand to be, my resource base, how I interact with others. That energy is now going to be moving back into bounds, and so the unpredictability factor of that out of bounds flavor is coming more into alignment here as we move to those last degrees of Capricorn, getting ready to do the Aquarian dance and hold hands for a day or two with Pluto, that just recently decided to do the Aquarian dance for the next 20 years or so. Oh yeah. As you kind of see the sun here at 12 degrees 59 minutes, Saturn here at 13 degrees 0, they're only a minute apart. This is a square. It's going to form on this same Wednesday day, square between that solar prerogative to be something, and Saturn, in Pisces is saying, yeah, what do you want to be? What's the most practical, effective structure that we might, as a square energy, challenge you with? That's what squares do, So here's this Sagittarian perspective that is being influenced by our retrograde Jupiter, saying, I really, really, really want to take a next step forward. And Jupiter is saying, don't rush, because if you do, you could get yourself in trouble. And then now we get this square coming in that is square to our sun. It's also square to Jupiter here, saying, is there a form that is, seeking your attention right now that takes into account a large picture, Sagittarius, that stimulates your curiosity, Gemini, and at the same time from Pisces, really works quite deeply and profoundly with the meaning of life. Can you feel that Sagittarian flavor in there, in that Piscean meaning of life? After all, both Pisces and Sagittarius are ruled by that retrograde Jupiter. You may have questions, but getting the clarity of an answer from them at this time, not guaranteed. Here we are on the 5th. On this day, as it unfolds, Mercury's going to be Casimi the Sun, because they're going to switch places. I can just show you one day ahead. See, they've just switched places. So here's our Thursday. It's a Jupiter day, by the way. So, there's an aspect of that Sagittarian flavor that is being tickled quite profoundly today. Remember, we still have that foundational, format of structure that Saturn represents sitting here in square to this dance, saying, oh, you want to build something new that you haven't done before, I will challenge you to make sure that you are paying attention to more than just the surfacey qualities of what it is that you think you're aiming for. Because I am in Pisces, and I want you to make sure that, you're not just putting together a form, but you're actually putting energy processes, energy beings, energy essence together, as well as a structure of form that, is about something much more than just the form. And, just for a little extra incentive, you can kind of see that when I go here to the Friday, Mercury has now joined into this. Well, it's been joined into this all along, but Mercury's in this square with Saturn as well. It's retrograde, remember. Yeah, so, and, perhaps there are factors of what could be involved in this structure that, are going to require some ironing out, shall we say, in the communication process of considering with others what is appropriate. Can you feel that energy there? Mercury's going backwards, saying, and I was looking at the amount of movement that Mercury has in for this particular retrograde cycle, and it moves from basically from 21 degrees of Sagittarius all the way back to 6 degrees of Sagittarius. So it's making a lot of movement in basically a short amount of time, from the 25th to the 14th, which is, that's a lot of energy shift. So, try not to get too set in what it is that you think is appropriate, because the energy shift that's going on right now is saying, I'm going to cover a lot of ground during this Mercury retrograde dance. Keep your wits about you. Saturday, the 7th. The weekend is here. We got that nice big T-square showing up. See, the sun is now opposed to that Jupiter. There's energy that needs to be engaged with quite uniquely. And, just for a little extra spice, because I haven't said enough today, notice, we'll go back a day, 5th. Watch what happens to Mars here. See how it turns red all of a sudden? On Saturday, Mars is going to be turning retrograde. That's right. That driving Martian energy is trying to set in motion a factor that needs some review. It's in Leo, How has your chance taking been going lately? Because now Mars, which is going to be in retrograde in Leo there for the rest of the year, on into sometime in January or February. It goes retrograde and stays retrograde until the 24th of February. So it's going to be retrograde for a while. Let's see. Oh, yeah. On this very same day, notice our Venus and Pluto holding hands here at 0 degrees of Aquarius. What deep, perhaps seemingly undisturbed places could be brought up, are being, unearthed, if you will, about that whole realm of, conjoining energy with others, Venus. Might there also be factors of economic resource factors that are also in this potentially tumultuous kind of unearthing exposure of things that you didn't know were factors, but they were. And somehow they were being kept from you. And Pluto's saying, no, 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 I'm not going to allow that to continue. I want to show you something that you didn't know was the case. And just for one extra little thing here on Saturday, notice here we're looking at Neptune. Neptune's retrograde, been retrograde for a while here. We go to Sunday, Neptune has turned direct. Down there in Pisces at 27 degrees, saying, I'm ready to take the rest of my journey on the way to Aries. So that's a shift of energy there, Our Neptune, our capacity to have creative imagination, that has no limits because it's in Pisces, is been, being given the opportunity to mull over, if you will, what levels of creative imagination might be appropriate. Now, one thing I didn't talk about when I was going through those energies considerations back on Monday, we'll go back to Monday, is that this setup right now, when looked at from a temperament factor, which shifts as you go through the day because the temperament is based on a lot of things like fire. Fire's an element, and we have fire ascended thing, and the fire element is it's hot. It really likes to increase energy. And that fire element is about, action, motion, starting things flowing that, you can feel the energization that is there with that fire sign. Now, the temperament for this particular beginning of the week is known as caloric, which is hot and dry. And you say, well, dry. Now, what kind of dry? Well, first, hot is intuitive. There's an intuitive kind of energy. Dry is it's a thinking kind of energy. But also, caloric is a bitter kind of energy. It's, it takes in that, fire and dry kind of energy, and when you add the dryness to it, think of something being parched. So the kind of energy of a caloric is to break things down, break things apart. There's a separation kind of energy to it. warfare. Warfare is another phrase that you could use for caloric. Tension, discrimination. These are all the kinds of caloric kind of energies that, our week is starting out with. Right there at 8 o'clock Monday morning. Just for a little aside for you, our upcoming president, his temperament is caloric. I don't know if you can feel that or not, but Kamala Harris, she was sanguine, which is hot and moist. You can kind of feel a energizing kicking up. Well, moist tries to make connections, and so she represented that possibility of energized connection with people. And, you can kind of feel that the hot, dry, caloric energy of, one who will not be named is a little bit more edgy and wanting to, change things really substantially, break things apart. He says it in his language and everything. Anyway, those are the temperaments that are in play that I'm just throwing out there for you to consider right now. That's air being the hot fire. The hot and wet is an air element. Hot and dry is fire. That's a caloric element. Dry and cold. This is the earth element. And the phrase they use for it is melancholic. There's a sensing kind of quality to that. And all these energies that come into play every week, every day, actually, a lot of them will come into play. Not all of them. At our individual charts, we'll have something. And cold and wet, that's, phlegmatic. There's a quality of feeling in there. It's the phrase for phlegmatic is salty. You picture this, how much salt water we have on the planet. Cold and wet. The sanguine is sweet. That's that hot and moistness energy. I just thought I'd throw out, some extra factors for you to ponder as we do this week's dance. I know I look at these things all the time when I'm doing charts for people, and I haven't brought it up here that much, but I was feeling, we're just about to head into the last month of the year, and so there are a number of factors always in play as I sit down to, roll the dice, if you will, and seeing who is playing with who, and what is it that they're saying to each other, and do I want to pay attention to it? I do want to pay attention to it all the time. I do pay attention to it all the time. And my weekly celestial chatters that I'm providing for you here as the Lively Astrologer, it's just to give you some moments to pause for cause and think about it. What is it that is in my best interest to do going forward? Ciao. See you next week.